Okay, so same day, a lot of hours later. All these cases have the primer pockets uniformed and the flash holes uniformed. Okay, that's all done and it's all good. Well, I was going to run them in the gun to see if they would go in. But then, of course, it occurred to me, wait a second. All right, this raw brass is 375 Rem Ultra Mag ADG brass. So when you measure the neck out here, these measure 0.3995. Call it 0.4. Well, the neck in the gun is, you know what, I should almost write this down. Well, you're just going to have to remember this. The neck in the gun is 0.388, right? That's what the neck in the gun is. So obviously these aren't going to go in there. And then I thought, well, I'll push them down, at least a couple of them, and I'll try them to see if they were going to go in. But here's the issue. All right, so these are bushings, just for guys that don't know. These are my 338 bushings. I have bushings for 22, as in 22, 250, 6 millimeter, 6.5, 7, 30, and 338. Well, this is 338. The issue here is the very biggest bushing I have is 368. And like I said, this measures 0.400. So I do not have the right bushings to be able to push that neck down using bushings. And then for a moment we thought, in this town we have a Sportsman's Warehouse and we have a North 40, that's like a farm store. And I thought, well, we should go look. There's no way. They're not going to have bushings like this. This is pretty rare stuff. Then it also occurred to me, the gun has a 388 neck in it. Now you got to realize how this works. So the bullet is 358, 358, 368, 378, 388. I should be using a whiteboard to show you this. That's 30 thou, okay? 30 thousandths over bullet diameter. So part of the way that you figure this out is take your case, and you should be doing this with a ball micrometer, but for the sake of this, take your case and measure this. All right, so that's 13 and a half there, 13 and a half there, 13 and a half there. So what I'm doing is, if you can't see, I'm measuring at 12, 3, 6, and the 9 o'clock position. And I measured quite a few of these, and they are very good. So this ADG brass, as far as neck diameter, neck thickness, is excellent. So the way you figure that out is, you know what, I want to use the whiteboard because you guys aren't going to understand this. So stop the camera. She has to clean that off, and then I'll actually show you what we're talking about. All right, so we cleaned off the whiteboard, and we got a bullet and stuff. I'll just show you how you do this, okay? And by the way, the only reason I'm doing all this is the customer that's coming from Indiana, he's going to be here. He's not even getting here till noon on Monday. So by the time, it's from, like I said, it's 120 miles, but doesn't matter. It takes over 2 hours to drive back down here. We probably won't even get here till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Then he only has what, Vicki? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. He has to go home on Friday, right?
Right.
So we don't have a whole lot of days. So I'm going to do as much of this as I can, and that's what brought all this up. So here's the thing. Here is a 255 grain hammer bullet, right? It measures 358, which is what it's supposed to. 358, 3585. Again, you can't go to half a thou with calipers. They're not accurate enough. You need a mic. Okay? So this measures 358. So the way you do this is take the number 358, right? Okay, now take a piece of brass. Like I said, measure it on a side. Okay, 13 and a half, 13 and a half, 13 and a half, 13 and a half. I just did that just a second ago. All right. Now, we're not going to use 13 and a half. We're going to use 14. So what you have down here is you have 14 and 14 on a side, and so you have 28, right? So you take the 28 and put it up here. You have 386. Okay, the neck in the gun is 388. All right, and really it's not going to be quite 386, because I rounded up. It's 13 and a half. So you would actually, it's probably actually going to be about
385 would be 13.
385.5 is about what it'll be. There's always a half a thou in there that somehow just miraculously appears from who knows where, because it's always a little bigger than what the math tells you that it should be. So you're going to have a loaded cartridge neck diameter probably right here of 3855, 385 and a half thou. But the neck in the gun is 388. So that's building in. We already got 2 to 2.5 thou, 3 thou clearance already. That's before we turn any necks. And so here I got his neck turning tool out. By the way, this is a Q.M.M. This is a very nice product. And I measured the mandrel in here because people don't realize mandrels come on neck turning tools. You can get all different sizes. This is a 354. On the inside, right? It was what will be the inside of this. So right now, and obviously we have to hold a 358 bullet. This is 372. So we have to push this down 358, 68. We've got to push it down, what, 14? Is that right? 58, 68. Yes, we got to push it down 14. And the question is, how are we going to do that? Because I don't have the bushings to be able to use bushings. That's my preferred method. I would rather use bushings in a bushing neck die, one of these, like this die right here. You could actually, oh, by the way, that brings up something else I'll come back to. You could use that exact die, okay? Because you can put the bushings in it. You could also, here, look right here. Here's 300 rem Ultra Mag. That's a bushing neck size die. You could use that die also. And by the way, just as a side note, because people ask me this, you better spin that around so you can show me. People will say, well, how can you do 70 or 80 or 90 different cartridges, yet I only show them the dies there. I don't know how many sets of dies there. I think there's like
quite a few.
70 sets of dies or 80 sets of dies, something like that. But a lot of those are even duplicates. So of individual cartridges, I don't know how many's there, maybe 60. What a lot of guys don't understand is that one set of dies that might be marked 7 rem mag can actually do 2 or 3 or 4 different cartridges. In other words, the bullet seeder die out of that will work for other cartridges. The bushing neck die out of that will work for other cartridges. The body die probably will not. And if it was a full length sizer, it would not, because those are cartridge specific. But I use many of those sets of dies there to do many cartridges that is not what it says on the label, because you're using bushings. So as long as you have a good selection of bushings, you can get the job done. This is something else that I should really clarify here, especially when you get into this kind of stuff. There's reloading by the numbers, by route or route. Reloading, in other words, a certain way of doing it. A, B, C, step D, then you're done. Okay, that's loading it so it goes bang. But as you get into more advanced reloading, what you're trying to do is you're trying to solve a specific problem. In other words, I have a specific problem. How am I going to solve that problem? And like right now, the problem is I don't have the appropriate bushings. So how am I going to push these necks down to where they'll hold a bullet, or maybe even a little bit below where they'll hold a bullet. And then, here, wait, I want to show you something here so that we don't get off track. And I realize I'm moving fast. Here is a standardized expander ball that came out of this custom set of Hornady dies. Okay, so if I use this die right here to push these down until I do one, I don't know what it's going to come out because I don't have any way. I'm at the house here. I have no way of reaching down in there. I don't have an internal ball mic, an expander type mic that will reach in there and tell me what size hole that is. All right. So if I run it in here and push it down, I may be confronted with how am I then going to bring it back up, say to 357 on the inside. All right, well, here's the expander ball that came with that set of dies, right? So look, that measures 355, call it 355. So that is a clue to me that if I use this die, it's probably going to push it down more than I want, because then they're pulling this expander ball back up through it. In other words, the die pushes it down, pushes the neck down, and then it pushes it under the diameter of this. So it's probably going to be 354, 353, something. And then they drag the ball back up through there. Well, for precision reloading, that's a very bad idea. But here's just a tip. If you did, say you didn't have this, we'll go into this in a second. If you didn't have that, the best way that you can still maintain quality brass and concentricity is leave this float. In other words, when you put this in the die, don't lock everything down. Don't lock all this down. Leave this float in there so that literally when it's in the die, it can go like that. That way, when the piece of brass comes back up over it, it will, rather than being pulled this way or this way, it'll self-center and it'll drag back up through the middle of that, and it won't pull your necks offline. That's kind of important. When people come here and we're doing reloading, they're often shocked to see that everything that I screw into the die, I don't lock anything down. Nothing. Everything. All my dies are just sitting up there, literally rattling in the press. And as long as you don't bump them, in other words, turn the die itself either direction, and once you get all your settings, you'll notice on my targets, it'll always say 0 run out. My brass, my loaded ammo is generally 0 run out. Like if you put it on an indicator and you spin it, it's nothing. And a lot of people struggle even to get down under like 3 thou, 2 thou. They get down to like 1 thou run out when they spin a case and they think that's good. Mine are almost always 0. And the reason is I don't lock anything down. Now, back to the problem at hand here. I have to take this from, well, we can measure on the inside. I have to take this from 372 to some measurement under 358. So that's the problem. How do I solve the problem? Well, I got all these dies here. This is the one. I talked to the customer on the phone again. We've been on the phone all day, going back and forth. This die was made for the conversion we're doing. So he said, let's try this die first. So what I'm going to do is I am going to push this up into there a little bit at a time. And I'm going to see how it starts to push the neck down and see what kind of a constriction we are getting, because you don't want to collapse the case or anything. I'm going to see how easy it goes in. And by the way, I asked him, did he put any lube on the neck? And he said yes. He used Imperial sizing die wax. Just use your finger. Put a little bit on there. And I'm going to be very clear on here, no guts inside the die. In other words, no expander ball, none of this. Take everything out of the die. I'm going to screw the die in the press. Listen to me, this is very important now. I'm going to screw the die in the press. I am not going to use the lock ring at all. I'm just going to let it like that. And it's the same reason. So that when this piece of brass goes up into the die, rather than having this thing locked down, it can, I got the wrong size shell holder, it can float in the shell holder and it can self-align. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to screw it just a little bit, and I'm going to start measuring it, and then I'll see what it measures on the inside. And I'm assuming it's going to be too small. It'll be sized down too small. So then what? There's my hope right here. Come and look at this. Okay? This is an expander mandrel, and it says E35. That's expand 35 on it. All right? It just so happens that it measures 357. Now, what you have to understand here and keep in mind is, let's just say we push that down to about 355. All right? Then we run this 357 in there, right? When it comes back out, it will still spring back just a little bit. So what I'm hoping is, with the equipment we have available, I am hoping that I can end up with an internal measurement here of about 3565. That'll give me 1.5 thou neck tension grip on the bullet. So that's what I'm going to be doing here in a minute. There was, if you remember in the other video, there was some cases that he experimented on. So before I take one of these brand new cases and potentially ruin it, running it in here, I'm going to get some of those other ones and I am going to experiment on them. And then we'll come back and we'll let you know what happens. All right, so all these, I have 84 of the good ones. But these cases right here are all the cases that he experimented on whenever he was designing this cartridge and whenever he was setting up his neck turner, whenever he was trying to find all his dimensions. So we can sacrifice some of these. This one appears that it has already been in a die. You see, this only measures 382 on the outside. These brand new ones measure 0.400. Okay, so I can sacrifice this case. And by the way, when we were talking earlier about this, about figuring out loaded cartridge neck diameters, and we were measuring all these, I think I forgot to say that I measured a whole bunch of these, and they are so uniform side to side that we're not going to turn necks. If the number on the loaded neck diameter of the loaded cartridge is small enough to go in a 0.388 chamber, which means it's got to be less than 387, we are not going to turn necks. We're just going to go on and see what we got. So I'm going to sacrifice this case right now. And so I put a number 4 shell holder on there. And look, the lock ring is the whole way at the top, right? I'm going to put just a little bit of this. You know, a lot of times this is just too much. It's just easier to show people. All right? So I put a little wee bit on that neck. Now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set it on the shell holder. I'm going to raise the ram to the top of the stroke. Nothing happened, right? I didn't feel anything. And now all I'm going to do is turn the die down. And I'm starting to feel resistance right there. Okay? It's getting tight. And I would actually say right now I am pushing the die down the neck. That's what it feels like. All right, so let's pull it out of here and look. And you guys aren't going to possibly be able to see it with this camera. If we had our great big Canon 605 here, you'd be able to see. But see, it's going down the neck right now. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put this back in here. Matter of fact, before I do that, I'm going to put a little bit more lube on that neck. Okay? Plus, that also shows us our line because it's moving the lube down the neck, and you can see where you're working. So I'm going to put that in there. I'm back at the top of the stroke. I'm just going to take this and turn it down. And I'm going to turn it. I'm going to take it. We'll check it out and check it again. But mostly, I'm going to turn it until I feel it hit the shoulder. By the way, you notice there's a flat on here. So if we need to use a wrench, we can very easily do that. Right? I can put this crescent wrench on there, and I can turn it down. All right? Whoop.
Scared.
I did a Vicky.
Scared the heck out of me.
What do you call 1,000 broken dishes? Around here, we call that normal.
That's not true.
Yes, it is. Hey, Hilo, doesn't Mom drop everything?
No. Well,
all right, so look.
Don't break your
Look, we are almost down to the shoulder. We've got about maybe, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch there to go. All right, so where did the dang wrench go? Dad never drops anything, ever. Stinking, I can't even say the name of it. China, you know what? China, you know what? Made me a different person. It really did. It messed me up. All right, so I'm going to run this back up here. Wonder if I can turn it by hand. It'd be yes, I am. So you'll be able to feel it when it touches the shoulder. Right there. So it just touched the shoulder, and it didn't quite get all of the neck. And now, this is going to be one of the issues, see? This case has to go in the gun. Now, you have to understand, when the customer was doing all this... All right, I'll slow down. When you're setting up a Wildcat, when you're designing a reamer, when you're going through all of this stuff, you don't have a gun. You don't have a chamber yet. So a lot of this is theoretical. A lot of this is just measuring things. A lot of it is guessing, well, is that going to work, okay? But you don't have a chamber to try it in. So now I have this pushed down to what that felt like was touching the shoulder, right? So let's see what we're at on the inside here. 355. So the bullet's 358. So 55, 56, 57, 58. That would be 0.003 of an inch neck tension, which is not a good word. Neck grip. Grip on the bullet. The bullet measures 358. But before we see the bullet in that and see what that feels like, if need be, we can run this dedicated expander mandrel back down in there, because see, it won't drop. And this measured, what did we say it measured? 357. This measures 357. So if need be, we can bring this up approximately 1 thou, because it's going to spring back just a little bit. But the next thing to do right now is see if this will go in the gun. So I got to stop. I got to remove the firing pin from the gun, and then I'll have Vicky help me, and we will see if this will go in. Okay, so here's the rifle, and here is the bolt. And I've showed this before, but I guess I'll show it now. Here's the firing pin. I already took it out. Okay, watch. Okay, there's a little indent right there, and that's what that snaps into, a little U-shaped valley. When you turn this, you're going to turn it by hand. Make sure you do not drop into the fired position. I've said that on other videos, but, you know, that's one of the things with videos is you don't know which videos people have saw. So maybe they saw the one where we did this, maybe they didn't. So anyways, if you're taking a bat firing pin out, do not accidentally turn it into the fired position. You must be very strong to get it back. Okay, you have to be fairly strong to do this. So grab this, push in, firing pin out. Okay, so now, this does have the plunger in it, but I reduced the spring tension on those plungers, so I'm not really worried about that right now. When you're trying to find cartridge overall length, max soft seat jam, if you really want to do it right, taking that plunger out is actually a little bit helpful. So, put the bolt back in. This is the piece that we just ran in there, okay? This is a solid bottom single shot. I guess we should show this, okay? Single front escutcheon. This is the one that had a Macmillan accidentally drilled a third hole, because sometimes I use 2 bolts instead of 1. It's actually 3. 1, 2, 3. This is an escutcheon for the 1032. It's blind. All right. Anyways, they accidentally drilled that and we filled it. And it's all right, I guess. It's not perfect. Here it is, right? Lay it in the tray in there. Stand the gun vertical, somewhat vertical. Push the bolt up. And there you go. It went in. Now, here's the thing. Vicky,
I'll hold it.
Yeah, can you hold it in film?
Yes.
All right, so you got that gun?
Yep.
All right, so here's the deal. This goes in, but the customer told me that he was messing around with these and he doesn't know exactly what he's done with each one of these. This may have gone into a full-length sizer die because he has that multiple ones here also. So what we're going to do now, right now, is with the camera running, I'm going to take one of our good ones and I'm going to hope beyond hope we're not about to destroy it. And I'm going to put a little bit of lube on it. Get this out of my way. Put a little bit of lube on the neck. This is one of the reasons why that I don't like using, I like using bushing neck dies. I do not like using a die that has a preset dimension in it that you cannot alter, because you have to take this now all in one shot. If you have bushing neck dies and you have enough bushings, you could take it 1 thou, 2 thou, 3 thou. You can take whatever amount that you choose to push it down. And if you do it really right, you may never have to use the expander, although, and I don't want to go too deep into this subject. Somebody just said in a comment on the first video of this that he said, David Tubbs said it's better to neck up than neck down. In some ways, I agree with that for a bunch of different reasons. You are moving brass. It's too deep to go into. But if you're using bushings and you can push it slightly under and then run an dedicated expander mandrel back in it to bring them up, I do think that you get more uniform bullet grip neck tension, which that's not a good term, but it's the amount of grip that's on the bullet. I do think it's more uniform when you are going up than when you are going down. In other words, instead of, say we just ran it in here and then we're going to seat bullets, that does not seem to work as good as pushing it back up then. But that's too much for this video, okay? So we're going to take one of these that we already have a lot of work in, and we're going to run this in here. And we're going to do it all in one shot. Now, because the die is floating, do not grab hold of the die because you'll change your measurements, your dimensions. All right, here we go. It seemed to go fine. All right, wipe your lube off. And this is the moment of truth. Will it go in the gun? If that's all it's going to take, that's great. All right, so. Oh, wow. Wow. So now, again, we always have to give a lot of credit to other people. So, what does this all mean? It means, this man's name is Damon Brody. What it means is, first of all, he did a lot of good figuring out how this was going to work. He sent all the dimensions and dummy rounds to Ray Gross. You guys have seen Ray Gross from Manson Reamers on other videos of ours. That means Ray Gross did an excellent job of making the reamer to fit the available components. And that means, of course, I chambered it with that reamer. I mean, everything, look at that. This is going to be, do you realize how easy this is going to be now? So all I have to do, I'll run these all, well, wait a second. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Wait 1 second. Let's see what this measures on the inside before we get too carried away. All right, it's about 353. Which is really good because that's what I was just talking about. So, okay, so I realize I'm giving too much information too fast. I understand that. Give credit to these guys because they did a good job. And obviously the reamer is good, really good. This is custom dies from Hornady. So obviously this is working very well. And we are then, you could seat bullets in that, okay? Let's be clear here. At 353, 354, it's a 358 bullet. That's 4 thousandths neck grip, neck tension. You could do that. You could do that. And in fact, if you were doing hard duty hunting, say you were going to take these rounds to Alaska and hunt big bears or something, that actually might be smart. But we're going to try to get accuracy out of this gun. So after I run all of these into this die without touching anything, then I'm going to put this mandrel in this is a Sinclair, this is a dedicated mandrel die. Watch, this drops in here like this. Okay? All right? And this is really cool. See, there's an O-ring in there. If you haven't used these, this is smart thinking. Listen. Can you hear that?
Yep.
See, the mandrel is flopping around in there, just like I'm telling you. Flopping around is good. Locking down is bad. Because that way, and when I put this in here, maybe I'll show that. I'm not going to lock this. I'm not going to lock the die body down, and the mandrel is loose inside the die. Okay, so nothing is locked down. So what this is going to allow us to do is I'll run all these in the die, then I'll push them all up with that expander mandrel, and then we're ready for primers, powder, and bullets. Now here's the interesting thing too, see, because this is not a SAMI CIP cartridge. He is using, I believe, the program called Quick Loads to figure out what powders we're going to use. Because when you're working with Wildcats, to some degree, you're in the dark, right? You're not exactly sure. It's not like you can just look up in a book and it says 358 Ultra Mag Alaskan, because that's not in the book, because it's a Wildcat. But he's also has a bunch of data that he got off of Quick Loads and stuff of the powder. I think that we're going to be using N560, I believe, and how much of it we're going to put in there. But we will, probably you'll see this tomorrow, we will load some of them at a reduced load. And then what I think we're going to do is we're going to take the powder with us when we go out to shoot. And remember, we're going to be shooting those Hornady bullets just as sacrificial bullets to blow the brass out. Yes, I know there's going to be a whole bunch of people that says you can hydroform brass. I get that. We're not going to be doing that. We're going to be doing it in the chamber. Here's the other thing that a lot of guys don't realize, because, you know, people are worried about round count. And there's a simple rule for this. The smaller the hole in the barrel, the more powder, the quicker the barrels go. The bigger the hole in the barrel, even with a lot of powder, the longer the barrels last. And so, who knows how many rounds you might get out of a cartridge like this. It might be 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 rounds. And I'm pretty sure, I know I'm not going to shoot it. I'm going to shoot this. This gun only weighs, here. Now, it does have a brake on it. It has a brake, right? But this gun only weighs probably, I don't know. I didn't weigh it. I bet this is only might be a 10 and a half, 11 pound gun. It's not very heavy. But we're going to put a big heavy scope on it. So you'll be looking at probably 13, 14 pounds. But if them things are really leaving at 3,000 feet a second, there's going to be recoil. And if you recall way back in a video, I said I didn't want to shoot this.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not shooting it, right? Well, it probably going to end up shooting it. I mean, I don't know how I get into these things, but I think this is going to be a super cool gun. It is something else about, if you've not messed with large cartridges, yeah, they kick. But as the hole seems to get bigger in the barrel, again, irregardless of how much powder you put behind it, to some degree, the kick becomes more of a big, hard shove than it's like a hard wrap. I mean, you want to get wrapped hard. Shoot a 300 Ultra Mag with a heavy bullet in a gun that weighs like 8 pounds at speed. Yeah. That thing will knock your freaking teeth out. You remember that one Kelly had?
Oh my gosh, I shot it.
You couldn't even shoot it.
I'm like, that's
couldn't
it.
even shoot it. I shot like 2 shots. I'm like, that's it. I ain't shooting it.
Been there, done
well, that's not the way that these bigger cartridges like this. The other thing is, too, this is a Macmillan A3. it handles recoil pretty good. Not as good as an A5, no. As good as an A6-7 bag rider, no. But it handles recoil pretty decent. So I don't think it's going to be bad. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run them all through. And then if I expand them, I'll show you that too. All right, see ya.